Mr. Duhem, we have now spent 3 hours hearing your doctoral thesis defense and raised many objections to your research during that time. I see no reason for further discussion and move that we now pass judgment. Professor Eremit, do you agree?
Yes, Professor Lippmann, I concur.
Professor Picard, do you agree?
I believe we have given the candidate full justice. Yes, I agree.
Mr. Duhem, my primary objection to your thesis has yet to be answered satisfactorily. I observe for the final time that your proposal contradicts the thermodynamic principle of maximum work so recently established by Professor Berthelot, who, I must remind you, is the greatest chemist in France and whose work has been recognized with the Grand Cross of the Legion of Honor, the highest reward our great republic can grant. With all the respect due to your diligent study, I find it inconceivable that a 24-year-old graduate could have disproved the work of a man who stands among the immortals of the French Academy. I offer you a last opportunity to present any convincing evidence for your position.
Since you insist, Professor Lippmann, I will cite the work of Professor Josiah Willard Gibbs, whose recent
You
work
mean the American chemist?
Yes, Professor. He has contributed many valuable insights into
I
chemistry
believe
and...
his doctorate was in engineering. His thesis was on mechanical gears, granted by Yale, apparently.
Ah, yes, Yale, one of their newer universities. Mechanical gears, you say? Mr. Duhem, what relevance does this have to your thesis?
He also studied mathematics at the Sorbonne, thermodynamics at Heidelberg, and chemistry at the University of Berlin under Heinrich Magnus.
So he studied in the German Academy under the Jew chemist?
Emil, mind your company.
Professor Lippmann, need I respond to that?
Professor Picard, your views on both Germans and Jews are well known to us.
My apologies, Professor Lippmann. Mr. Duhem, may I ask you to cite the paper of Professor Gibbs to which you refer?
Yes, Professor. He published in 1876, and since
Almost
then...
9 years ago. And what has been the result of that work? Can you demonstrate its influence on the field?
I have read it myself and found it highly convincing. The equations are masterful, and the chemistry
I
is...
asked for evidence of its impact on the field. A 9-year-old paper of any significance should have persuaded the broader scholarly community by now. Yet Professor Berthelot's principle of maximum work remains in good standing and continues to be taught in the best academies.
Mr. Duhem, I suggest you also consider that attempts to defend your own doctoral thesis on the basis of an appeal to another man's work is not exactly in the spirit of the solemn duty we all undertake today. If your work is valid, it should stand on its own merit.
Mr. Duhem, your current strategy is most unwise. It has only undermined my confidence in your thesis, which, I must remind you, is supposed to be an original contribution to the universal store of human knowledge. If Professor Gibbs' work has merit, it seems unusual that it appears to have persuaded no one. And even if it had overturned the academic consensus, an appeal such as you have made would still disqualify your thesis as substantially unoriginal.
Professor Lippmann, my thesis is entirely my own work. I only noted, when pressed, that its conclusions have some scholarly support. Yet those conclusions are, nevertheless, the product of my independent calculations.
So you say, yet knowing you have read Professor Gibbs, we are not in a position to be certain of that independence.
Professor Picard, your judgment, please.
I find the thesis unconvincing. Rejected.
Professor Eremit, your judgment, please.
The thesis lacks experimental substantiation. Mr. Duhem's appeal to the gear man was most unorthodox. Rejected.
I believe I have articulated my own objections well beyond necessity. Rejected. Mr. Duhem, it is with great regret that on behalf of this committee I advise your thesis, the thermodynamic potential and its applications to chemical mechanics and the study of electrical phenomena, fails to meet the high academic standards of the École Normale Supérieure and is consequently rejected. We wish you well in your future academic career.
Professors, I thank you for your gracious consideration and for the frankness of your judgment. Good day.